Hello, this is Excel, and welcome to my Shadow Priest log review guide. This should be helpful for anyone trying to analyze their performance or someone else's with the help of Warcraft logs to pinpoint problem areas for improvement. So let's just get into it. So I'll pull up an old log of mine, an old Croesus log, and the first thing you want to do is make sure you go to Analyze, Damage Done, and we'll just click on the priest that we're looking at. So we want to just get right into it. We'll just go right to the buffs, look right for the problem. So we go straight to void form and check the void form uptime. If this is below 75%, go ahead and click on this and we'll find out why. So what you want to see is you want to see a void form cycle that looks like big, medium, small, big, medium, small, and just repeating with that same three void form cycle. So your first void form should be 40 stacks or greater, your second void form should be 30 stacks or greater, and your third void form should be 25 stacks or greater, and that should just repeat over and over and over ideally. Something else to note is that the time between void forms shouldn't be any more than about 10 to 12 seconds. So what this usually means is if the void forms are greater than 10 to 12 seconds, this is usually an easy one to fix. The person may be using information from an old legacy of the void guide, which was before the 7.15 patch, where it advised that you go into void form at 85 insanity or higher. This is no longer what you want to do. This is completely wrong. You want to go into void form as soon as humanly possible. So if you do see those big gaps, chances are that could be it. So make sure that the person's using Void Eruption as soon as possible, right at 65 insanity, or as soon as they're able to. Going into some other things, so what you want to see is in your first void form you should have a torrent and a PI. In your second void form you should just have a torrent. In your third void form you should have nothing. So if the void forms don't look like this, we'll go ahead and we'll see why that is. So first we'll check the torrents. So what you want to do here is just note the time of the torrent. So we got 13, a minute 14, and 2:28. So we'll go back to the void form and we'll go 13 seconds in would be right at the beginning, which is fine. Then 1:14, so this should be my second void form, and that's fine. And then the next one should be in my fourth void form, and I had it at 2:28, so, and that's in my fourth void form. That's fine. That's a little bit later than I would have liked, but that's still fine. So the next thing, if the void torrents look okay, and they really should be fine, what you want to, if they're not fine, then obviously you know that's part of the problem. The next thing you really want to look at is power infusion. So look at the power infusion usages. So we have 27 seconds here and 2:33. So we'll go back to void form. 27 seconds in would have been right at 20 stacks. That's pretty optimal. You want to use it so that your void form and your power infusion fall off at the same time. So ideally 20 seconds before the end of your power infusion. It looks like I probably could have delayed it a little bit there, but that's not too bad. Now for the next one, it was 2:20, or sorry, I'm trying to remember what it was. Let's see here. It was 2:33, I believe. Yes, it was 2:33. So we'll go to 2:33. That's at 19 stacks. That's probably a little bit early as well, but that's still fine. So if their PIs look fine, their torrents look fine, and they're still not getting quite to the numbers that you want to see, what we'll have to do then is we'll try to find out what they're doing so that that's causing their void forms to drop off. So we'll look at their casts. So you go to casts, and what we want to see here is the timelines. So we'll just skip right to the Void Eruption, look for Void Eruption, and what you should see for the opener is you should see, if they have 4-piece Void Eruption, you should see the Void Bolt spam, and then you should see the torrent. If they don't have 4-piece, what you should see is Void Eruption. You should see one filler like a Mind Flayer or Mind Blast, and then you should see a Void Bolt, and then you should see the torrent. After this torrent, you should see there's a couple things you should see. If you don't have the legendary belt, what you should see is Void Bolt, Mind Blast, Mind Flay, Void Bolt, Mind Flay, and then repeating. I have the legendary belt, so obviously this looks a little bit different. It's just Void Bolt, Mind Blast, Mind Flay, and then it just repeats like that. Joins the legendary belt. Now, another thing is if you're lusting on the opener and you're checking their first Void form, something else to note is that Void Bolt should be used every other global cooldown. So after Power Infusion is used here, what you want to look for is to make sure that they're using Void Bolt every other GCD. So make sure there's not 2 spell casts between each Void Bolt. So it should be Void Bolt something, Void Bolt something, Void Bolt something. So without the legendary belt, it should be Void Bolt, Mind Blast, Void Bolt, Flay, Void Bolt, Mind Blast, Void Bolt, Flay. With the legendary belt, you can basically just spam Void Bolt, Mind Blast until you run into Mind Blast charges. So you'll see here it's like Void Bolt, Mind Blast, Void Bolt, Mind Blast, Void Bolt, Flay, Void Bolt, Mind Blast, Void Bolt, Mind Blast, and then Lust falls off just past here. So you'll notice I go back to the irregular rotation. If you don't see a problem with this, then the only other thing, and they're still falling out early, it could be a possibility that they're very undergeared. So just double check. So you can just go to the summary for the person, go back to tables, and you can just have a look at their stats. Chances are, if they're doing everything right, they're not delaying, they're not getting really bad latency or anything like that, then they just may have really crappy stats. So they might have super low haste, and that will cause them to not be able to maintain Void form. They might not have 2-piece or 4-piece or something like that. They might have really bad legendaries, anything like that. It's under almost the worst circumstances possible. You shouldn't be doing any worse than, I would say, 36 or 37 stacks, even with really bad haste, no 2-piece or anything like that. You should still be able to get to that point. But keep in mind that depending on the talents and stuff that you take, that if your gear is really, really bad, then you may not be able to sustain the 3 Void form cycle. And this is just because eventually Void Torrent will get pushed back further and further, and it won't allow you to be able to maintain that quite so well. Like, you'll fall behind and eventually you'll fall a Void form behind. However, if you are able to maintain the 40, 30, 25 cycle, then you should have no problem maintaining that the whole time, not including mechanics. So if you get a crappy mechanic, oh well, that could be a reason. And that's something else you can look at. So with that in mind, hopefully you have nailed the problem. If there's still little minor things that you want to look at, I mean, you can nitpick as well. So for example, you can make sure that they're fully buffed. You can check their gear and the summary to make sure they have the right gems and enchants and stuff like that, because you can see if they're using cheap gems or enchants or whatever like that. And then you can also just see some of the other things, if they got good trinket procs or if they just got really unlucky or something like that. And also things like double potion usage. Other than that, that's pretty much it. That's just a quick way to check to see if somebody's doing it right in the logs as a Shadow Priest. If you have any questions or thoughts on this video, please leave your feedback in the comments section below. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.